Hi, this is Norman. Today we're going to look at Psalm 119, verses 153 to 160. If you'd like to go ahead and look along with me, we'll start reading 153. Consider mine affliction and deliver me, for I do not forget thy law. Plead my cause and deliver me. Quicken me according to thy word. Salvation is far from the wicked, for they seek not thy statutes. Great are thy tender mercies, O Lord. Quicken me according to thy judgments. Many are my persecutors and mine enemies, yet do I not decline from thy testimonies. I beheld the transgressors and was grieved, because they kept not thy word. Consider how I love thy precepts. Quicken me, O Lord, according to thy loving kindness. Thy word is true from the beginning, and every one of thy righteous judgments endureth forever. Once again, what an awesome passage to look at. Here we start with verse 153, and we ask God to consider and look at our life and the troubles that have come upon us. All of us, if we live very long, have things that happen, the trials or struggles that we live through, and our constant prayer is to ask God to deliver us, and for us personally, in the midst of that trial, to do what we say here in verse 153, for I do not forget thy law. That's the example that I want to follow. I want to live in the midst of trials and not forget what God has to say. Verse 154 goes on and says, Plead my cause and redeem me. Give me life according to your promises, or to your promise. Here, this is an idea that's repeated often as we've gone through Psalm 119, that God quickens us, gives us life, and it's according to His Word. It's according to the promises in His Word that He gives us life. His truth brings life. And we plead with God, we beg God, give me life according to the promise that you've made. Verse 155 says, Salvation is far from the wicked, for they do not seek your statutes. And here we're comparing, the writer's comparing himself with people who don't follow what God has to say. They don't seek your word, they don't seek your law. So salvation is far from them, because where does salvation come from? Salvation comes from the Lord. Salvation comes from His Word and His truth and from His promise. So here, the writer's reminding himself, salvation is far from people who are far from God's Word. The flip side of that is also true. As we draw near to God's Word, to Him, then salvation is close. It's as close as His promises. Verse 156 says, Great is your mercy, O Lord. Give me life according to your rules. I love the King James here. Great are thy tender mercies. God's mercy is tender and gentle. He's loving. He's kind. He wants to give us life. He wants to quicken us. He has a plan for us, and it's a plan according to His Word. That's what we're constantly reminded to come back to here in Psalm 119. We need to rely on God's mercy, and God's mercy is consistent with what He has to say in His Word. 157 goes on and says, Many are my persecutors and my enemies, but I do not decline from, I don't swerve from your testimonies. God, I have people who are against me, I have people who are troubling me, I have trials in my life, but I am not going to get away from your word. That's what the writer's saying, and I think that's a good example for us to follow. We want to stick with what God has to say through thick and thin. Whatever comes our way, whatever trial we have, we want to be consistently following in God's Word and following His will. Verse 58 says, I look at the faithless with disgust. In the King James, I beheld the transgressors and was grieved because they kept not thy word. You see here is the heart that's troubled because people are not keeping God's word. People are not following what God has to say. And that grieves us. It troubles us. It's a terrible thing for people to hear and know God's word and not to follow it. And that should bother us. Why is that? 159. Consider how I love thy precepts. Give me life, quicken me according to your steadfast love, according to your loving kindness. Because of how much we love God's word, because of how much we love Him, it bothers us that other people don't follow His word. We want them to know what God has to say. Because, the foundation 160, the sum of your word is true from the beginning to the end. The sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous rules endures forever. All that God has to say is eternal. His Word is eternal. His Word is truth. Because it is truth, we absolutely love it. And because we love it and desire to fill our lives with it, it should disturb us then that other people don't follow God's Word. So here again, we're looking at a section that challenges me, as I look at it, to really be focused on God and His Word, to plead with Him to give me life according to His Word, to really love what God has to say and live what God has to say every day. So I hope today, wherever you are, that you're having a great day following in God's Word. Talk to you later.